It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar on using social media for research uptake and policy advocacy. My name is Victoria Lebrun, and I work on research uptake for the Countdown on NTDs project. I am a research associate at FHI 360 based in Durham, North Carolina. My background and my passion is in the use of data and research results to inform policy and strengthen programmatic decision making. Since I've been working with Countdown, I've helped to synthesize the project's work and share its progress. I'm excited to have this opportunity to talk to you today about using social media specifically for research uptake. Today's webinar will be helpful for any researcher who wants to raise awareness about a topic, engage with related research, potential collaborators, and organizations that are working on the same issue or in a related sector. For some of you, this will be a reminder, and for others, a lot of it might be new. I want to acknowledge upfront that a lot of people are afraid to make mistakes with social media, understandably, and some feel like they just don't have the time. But social media is a powerful tool for research uptake that cannot be ignored. Whether you use social media daily or just getting started, this webinar will have valuable tips and advice for you. Now, I'd also like to welcome my colleague, Aubrey Weber, and allow her to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Tori, for introducing our presentation. My name is Aubrey Weber, and I'm a technical officer in the Research Utilization Department, also at FHI 360 in North Carolina. Prior to global public health, my background is rooted in journalism and sociology. I've always had an affinity for the power of human connection through communication and the written word. And over the past few years, I have worked on many social media related projects from the startup stages to scale up. So I'm thrilled to be with you today as we dive into this important topic. To start us off, we have three main learning objectives today. There's a wide range of familiarity with social media and global health, as Tori said, and among this audience too. So regardless of the status of your professional relationship with social media, whether you've been married to it for years or just getting to know it, by the end of this webinar, our sincere hope is that you, one, feel better able to describe the various uses of social media for research, two, feel comfortable writing social media messages from a professional standpoint, and three, understand how analytics can be used as a tool to inform content development. This webinar is intended to share practical strategies to disseminate information to colleagues and funders, as well as the broader field of researchers around the world whose work relates to yours. Now, I would like to add a little disclaimer here before we move forward that while the basics of this webinar can and should be applied to multiple social media platforms, we will be focusing on use of Twitter today because it is Countdown's preferred platform and it's highly relevant on a global scale.
Now, before we dive in, I would like to start off with the basics of logging in and creating a Twitter account. You should have a Twitter account, but just to demonstrate, they make it quite easy to set up. All you need is an email address, username, and password. So if you don't have one yet, sign up now. Regardless of whether this is your first time tweeting or if you're an old pro, we want you to log in during this webinar, and we will actively practice tweeting. We'll talk more about reach and what it means later in the webinar, but I want to quickly mention now that if reach is your main goal, Twitter offers tools to amplify content quickly and simply, which is why Countdown uses Twitter so much. I'm talking about sharing your messages and content with anyone online who's interested in the topic through the use of hashtags, those keywords with a pound sign in front of them. If you never understood the point of a hashtag, it is like adding a search term to your post. Anyone who searches for that term will see what you wrote, and if they follow that term, your post will appear in their feed. So this is how we're going to practice today. We'll do a quick demo right now. If you have questions or comments at any point during our presentation, please tweet and use the hashtag SM4research in your tweets, and we'll refer to your questions at the end during our discussion session. So if this is your first time using Twitter, try it out right now. You can copy the message on this slide that says, "I'm excited to learn about SM4 research today," or you can write your own message about using social media for research. There are also two handles here. @Countdown will automatically share the tweet with the Countdown main Twitter account, and @FHI360 will share your tweet with the FHI360 account. If you use someone's handle in your tweet, it helps your audience know who you're talking about or who you're talking to. If you want to try that out, add another Twitter handle for a colleague so they will see your tweet whether or not they're following you. Now, Aubrey's going to provide a brief snapshot of the impact and influence of social media in today's world. This is important context for anyone who wants to understand the validity of social media as a professional tool. She will also give some background on social media's broader role in global health.
So this year, in 2018, more than 1 in 3 people worldwide, in fact, about 42% of the global population, are active users of social media. This is an ever-increasing statistic that shows absolutely no signs of slowing down. More people are getting online every single day, even in the resource-limited settings in which we often work. Skeptics and those that might not fully understand the breadth of social media may believe that this is all just a phase, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Social media is in a constant state of change and growth, morphing and reshaping itself to fit the needs of people in a world that thrives on connection both on and offline. This data visual, provided by a social media management platform called Hootsuite, is a decent snapshot of the number of digital users around the world. Now, what I like about this data and what I really want to highlight here is this piece. When we compare the number of active social media users this year to last year and the year before, you can see that the jump is truly remarkable. 11% more of the world's population is on social media today than just 2 years ago in 2016. Social media is exponentially more relevant with each passing year, and it should be noted that its relevance has turned into influence. For the sake of time, I want to touch upon just one particularly impactful example in which social media has really flourished and through which the power of it has been felt worldwide. The 2017 Women's March humbly began with one woman in Hawaii creating a Facebook event. She invited her friends to join her in Washington to advocate for legislation regarding many issues, including women's and workers' rights and reproductive health. And we all know how that march unfolded. That one Facebook event turned into 673 organized marches and nearly 5 million estimated marchers around the globe. This does not even take into account the number of unorganized marches, of which there were also many. The reach exemplified here is truly incredible. This social movement and many others that came before and have come after have shaped discourse and influenced human behavior online and offline. Social movements like the Women's March have the potential to change the global landscape and enabling environment that allows for behavior change and improved health and development outcomes. This is a true example of the power of social media. Now, we will give you a minute to answer the following question using Twitter. Include the webinar hashtag SM4research, and we'll review your answers at the end. So the question is, what is a benefit of using social media in your work? We'll give you a few minutes to get on your Twitter accounts and use the hashtag so that we can easily find it at the end. And while you're doing that, I will move on to the next slide for the sake of time. But please include your answers on Twitter so we can all see them at the end. So now we ask ourselves, why social media for our programs and our research? This graphic provides a good summary of what we are capable of on social media as researchers. You can successfully use social media as a tool for knowledge management because it allows you to reach an audience of stakeholders, communicate with them, learn about user and stakeholder preferences, disseminate content, re-engage with your stakeholders for feedback and data collection, and then share what you've created based on the previous steps. So with all of that, we arrive at the value of social media for global health. Platforms have many functions that can complement global health priorities and goals. These functions can include research and data collection, knowledge management, behavior change, intervention, implementation, advocacy, and reach. When you think of social media at the base level, the vast networking capabilities are tremendous. Connecting with other researchers and potential funders, linking up and sharing with colleagues, and participating in online conversations via designated unique conference hashtags. These are all just a few ways that social media can help global health projects and professionals expand their influence. In any programmatic setting, but especially those with minimal or limited resources, social media gives implementers and researchers the ability to reach people over virtually any geographic region and share information through multiple channels. Messages can then be further amplified through cross-posting and sharing on more than one platform, which has the power to take your content to a whole new level. Now, I'd like to give some examples of LSTM programs that are utilizing social media and talk a little more about Countdown as an example. All of these consortia and partnerships listed here have robust social media platforms. As for Countdown specifically, many of you may know that the project has a main Twitter account as well as 4 country-specific accounts for the countries in which the project operates: Cameroon, Ghana, Liberia, and Nigeria. The project also has a blog on its website and frequently links tweets to blog posts and web pages. So you may be asking yourself, why does the project focus on Twitter as its main social platform? Often, to fully understand your audience's wants and needs, you have to consider key influencers, also called stakeholders. Why do they matter here? Key influencers that include funders, supporters, existing networks, policymaking and donor organizations, and partners are the people we know our audience is turning to for information. So naturally, we want to engage in conversations with them. It is also helpful to consider stakeholders when you want to share resources widely, as partners can help you amplify content. Countdown's main partners and stakeholders use social media, and more prominently Twitter, to share programmatic and scientific achievements and to get news from the NTD research community. Here are some examples of how Countdown successfully uses social media to amplify messages and send followers to the Countdown blog and website. It's important to mention that Countdown has a social media strategy and guidance in place that encourages members to post, lists key stakeholders to follow and engage with, and recommends popular hashtags to include in tweets. The project's country accounts often tweet to share what's happening in each of the 4 countries where research is ongoing. They focus their messaging to highlight fieldwork, dissemination meetings, and collaborations with NTD working groups and technical groups. The main project account shares recent publications and blog posts with more than 2,800 followers, and tweets to increase the Countdown presence and voice at international conferences. Countdown also uses hashtags liberally so that anyone following those terms on Twitter will see our content. Last but not least, individual researchers who work on the project also post and interact with the project's accounts. Another best practice that we can probably all improve on is cross-posting. This means each time you publish a paper or write a blog post, we recommend also posting about it on LinkedIn and in other professional groups specific to your field. Personally, I've noticed that when I share a blog post that I've written to a group of global health professionals on LinkedIn, that post gets twice as many people reading it. That's a big impact for something that only takes 5 minutes to do, since the blog was already written and published.
In this section, we'll lay the groundwork together to start tweeting in a way that builds professional relationships and can lead to collaborations. So we're going to learn how to write a tweet that encourages people to read it, click on it, and respond to it. Then I'm going to walk through some situations that are opportunities for individuals to use social media for research uptake. This slide represents what I think of as the basic recipe for a tweet. Of course, you must start with a message. What do you want to say? It could be about what you're working on today, something you just read that spoke to you, or even a question. The next step is to insert hashtags for the main themes of your message. If it relates to a particular disease or health problem, you can bet there's a hashtag for it. Here are some examples from Countdown social media guidance. Finally, before you publish the tweet, add the handles for people and organizations that will be interested in the tweet or who are related to the message. People love being mentioned, and it gives them an invitation to respond. If there's a relevant link or image, include that too. At first, tweets may look funny, but you'll soon get used to it. All right, now I want to walk us through a few real-world scenarios when you should tweet about your research. We'll start with a highly relevant one, attending a conference. As most of you are already aware, conferences are creating their own hashtags these days, so you can easily track what others are saying about the conference and share your own posts with them. There are a few ways you can take advantage of this. For example, if there's a researcher you particularly want to connect with at the conference, you can write a message about what you're looking forward to learning about from them, and mention them along with other colleagues who may also be interested in the topic. Then include the conference hashtag. If you're presenting, you definitely want to tell participants why they should attend your session. And when you're there, some things you can do are share about conversations you have that are related to your research, and tweet about meeting people whose work you admire. You can even include a selfie if they don't mind. Be sure to mention them and their organizations using their Twitter handles. After a conference or event, don't neglect to reflect on what you've learned, and be sure to respond to others' tweets as well if they relate to your work. So this is a part where you get to practice. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to tweet about an upcoming event related to your research. And I've provided an example that's related to the core NTD meeting next week, or the ASTMH conference that's coming up. If this doesn't apply to you, you can use a different event, or you can tweet about a colleague's presentation. I'm not attending the conference, but several Countdown colleagues are, so I might post something like, what are the best practices to increase community engagement to beat NTDs? And then mention colleagues who are presenting and why you might want to attend their session. So when you're doing this, this little tweet activity here, you don't have to use the webinar hashtag. But if you have any questions for us, please do use the hashtag to ask us anything about social media for research uptake. Okay, so you can publish that tweet while we're doing the webinar. And I've provided some blanks that you could fill in with different topics that might be of interest to you. But like I said, be original and write your own as well if you want. The next scenario is publications in peer-reviewed journals. It's so exciting when your work, which has been months or years in the making, is finally published. You should tweet and post on social networks when the article comes out and link to it. Of course, we know that. Publications are often shared by linking to them in a general announcement post, just that I've published this paper. But I want to give you some other ways that you can use social media to your advantage. It is much more powerful to post an insightful question that your paper raises, which can lead to productive online conversations, or an insight about something you learned while doing the research. Don't neglect to follow up on the comments people make. As the quote points out, there will be conversations about your research, so why not participate in them? The link on this slide is a good source for more information and ideas about sharing your research online. Here are a few examples of posts related to Countdown's research that I thought were particularly good. What I want to point out here is that you can and should post about your work continually, even while it's ongoing, but also after you've published. And this is how you can do that. Colleagues in your field will want to know about your research topic, even if you aren't ready to share the results yet. You can post about the issues that you're working on. Another approach is to tweet about cross-cutting themes in your work and interact with people and organizations who are also sharing about those issues and themes. So on the left is a great example of a very successful tweet about the methods and goals of ongoing research. It mentions partners and the project's funder and links to a blog post. And on the right is another good example of how you can highlight an issue and link to a paper. Connecting the neglected tropical disease, female genital schistosomiasis, with HIV and AIDS encourages HIV researchers to read and learn more about FGS, so it's expanding your audience. The tweet concisely links the two topics by saying that FGS increases the risk of contracting HIV. The last example I want to talk about is how you can use social media to enhance the dissemination of your work and advocate for programmatic or policy change. Social media is a good tool to help people and organizations understand an issue. However, it's important to acknowledge the essential work of changing policy or practice happens in person. When you're sharing your research findings at a dissemination meeting, one best practice is to connect with partners on Twitter and thank them for their contributions. You can also thank attendees for joining and considering the importance of your work. And another thing you can do is to mention people who weren't able to attend, but may still want to know about it. So these kinds of tweets help strengthen relationships, and in the time between your task force meetings, policy reviews, or those types of events where decisions are made, you can use social media to keep your message at the top of stakeholders' minds. Another quick tip I want to mention is that using statistics is a very good practice if you want to raise attention about an issue. Letting the data speak for themselves is very powerful, and when you link to evidence, it keeps the conversation focused on what matters.
So finally, for this section, we've reached monitoring. It's often a forgotten step in programs and professional social media strategies or plans for themselves, but is perhaps one of the most crucial pieces. Why should we monitor our social media platforms? Monitoring your content is necessary in order to track diffusion of information you are putting out there, to better understand your followers and how they react to and engage with your posts, and ultimately to inform your future posts. As researchers, I know I don't need to stress the importance of data collection here. Social networks provide us with a ton of data about our posts, but it can be hard to distinguish the signals from the noise. Again, there are hundreds upon thousands of tools online that can help you decipher and make sense of what you see, but I've picked out 5 specific metrics to walk through that I think are among the most important. First, we'll start with posts. Tracking your posts is valuable as a comparison tool. We looked at some of Countdown's blog views by posts, and these were some of the elements of the most read posts. When we look at Twitter, it's important to note that Twitter drives traffic to content that is more informative and expands on the message by linking to supplemental information, like a blog post or papers, websites, etc. The second metric to track is your reach. This is the total number of people who have seen your content. Now, this is intrinsically connected to tracking posts on a blog platform, but in general, it's a good idea to keep track of how many people are active on your Twitter account as well. Maybe you noticed that during the month of August, you had substantial reach, but in December of the same year, you hit record lows. Take a look back at what you posted during those months and how often, what events you were involved in, conferences your program was a part of, etc., and decipher what may have impacted your reach. In this case, the most views were the month when the project launched and months when popular blog posts were published. Now, go ahead and log into Twitter Analytics to explore some of the metrics you can easily track yourself. When you log in, you'll see something like this at the top of your screen. Several of these stats indicate your reach. To learn more about the impact of individual tweets, go to the Tweets tab. You can start doing that now, or you can make a note to do this later. It'll be very telling if you're an active Twitter user or just starting out. So the next metric is impressions, or the total number of times your content is displayed on Twitter. To better understand how this works, think about it like this. People may see multiple impressions of the same post. For example, someone might see your tweet on their homepage because they follow you, and they might see that same tweet again if their friend retweets it. Or someone might see a tweet that you tweeted in a hashtag NTD feed, and again in a conference feed because the same post included the hashtag TropMed18. In this example from Countdown's Twitter account, during a 4-week period, the account had over 13,000 impressions, and this one tweet had over 2,000 impressions. This is because not only were popular hashtags used, like ICOPA 2018, South Korea, and parasitology, but additionally, 2 ICOPA Twitter handles were also tagged. So this tweet alone was going into many different feeds and being seen by many different audiences. The last 2 example metrics to track are engagement and mentions. Engagement refers to the total number of people who have looked at, clicked on, commented on, liked, retweeted, or otherwise interacted with your post in any way. So how is this different from impressions? Well, engagement rate is a key performance indicator that evaluates just how well you engage with your intended audience through factors like users' comments, retweets, and likes. Mentions are often included within the engagement metrics, but they also deserve their own scrutiny. Mentions are the total number of times your platform's username has been mentioned by others. Why is this important? Well, you need to be aware of what others are saying about you, for one, and you should be tracking that if you are mentioned. Mentions are also a good way for partners, funders, colleagues, and other researchers in the field to highlight the work you are doing and share posts with appropriate sourcing. And if @DFID UK tweets about your program, you can bet that your numbers across the metrics board will go up. So how do we use all of this great information at our fingertips to adapt our content? Well, the insights are especially key. Monitor to find out what is working, what is not working, and what is engaging your followers most. Let the analytics also tell you what aspects of your personal strategy may need some work. And similarly, what aspects of your content are supporting your goals well. All of this social media data is important, but you should not get too caught up in data that isn't actionable, as many of you already know. I want to note here that as researchers, we do not need to track our content in the same way and with the same frequency as our project accounts do, but it's still good practice to check, maybe once a month if you're an active user, just to see how well your messages are getting out there to others. Ultimately, your goal here is to promote your work, your research, your project's mission, and the comparative work of others as best as you can. This means you need to be open to evaluating yourself as well. And remember, social media is an extremely powerful tool for research uptake. It can have multiple applications for global health, and when used especially thoughtfully, it can propel the important work you are doing forward.